Okay, welcome everyone. Maybe somebody has the mic on. So welcome everyone. My name is Marco Armiero, and it's a great pleasure to welcome all of you, those who are listening and viewing us online now, but especially all the ones that will look at this roundtable maybe after all. This is probably the beauty of this kind of tool, that you can use it whenever you are free, maybe while you are cooking, or maybe while you are running, or just you want to go to sleep, and this will help you. So very good. Happy to be with my colleagues and friends for this roundtable. This roundtable is hosted by the journal Resistance, a journal of radical environmental humanities, published by by the University of Nebraska Press, and I am the editor-in-chief of this journal. You can see the background is precisely the cover of the journal. I would like to give the word immediately to Valentina Vetturi, because Valentina is really the engine, the heart and soul, the mind of this roundtable. So, Valentina, the floor is yours. Maybe you want to introduce the event.
Yes, thank you, Marco. So, good evening. Thank you to Marco, and also to Asania, Emice, Rubens, and maybe Felipe will join us later for gathering you here. So I introduce myself briefly. I'm an artist and educator currently based in Bari, in the southern of Italy. I teach at the Fine Arts Academy in Bari and in Naba, Rome, and my practice unfolds at the intersection of performance, writing, and transdisciplinary research. For the past year, I've been engaged in a performative research project named Mimosa Pudica, thanks to a grant from the Italian Council, and above all, thanks to the alliances I've built with scholars, scientists, philosophers, curators, and with the plants itself. So this roundtable is happening in the frame of this research, and thanks to the alliance built with Marco. Mimosa Pudica belongs to the Fabaceae family, and it originates in the tropical region of Central America. It has fascinated scientists and observers since the 1600s. Unlike most of plants, we can perceive its movement with the naked eye. Its leaf, in fact, falls when touched, when threatened, or when the day turns to night and vice versa. This spectacle of visible movement makes Mimosa Pudica an exception. Monica Gagliano, an ecologist, in Thus Spoke the Plant, described this plant as a bridge between the animal and plant kingdom, being both sensitive and insensitive, and challenging the distinction we often taken for granted. Mimosa, as her name suggests, Mimosa Pudica, is shy. At the same time, she's a mime, a performer, and at times she is disobedient, refusing to act as we expect from a plant. So Mimosa Pudica has been the subject of experiment since the 17th century, many of which show her capacity to learn and retain information. I will return to this later. For now, I want to share the question at the heart of this research. What does it mean for a plant to remember? How does it forget? And how might learning alongside plants suggest other ways of approaching the prodigious memories of digital technologies? Could plants inspire principles for more balanced digital ecologies? These questions are connected to a broader trajectory in my work. For more than a decade, I've been exploring memory, or better, the movement between remembering and forgetting, through different lenses. Human memory in the series Alzheimer Café, dedicated to the poetic persistence of musical fragments within neurological degeneration, the fragile memory of papier-mâché dissolving in water, the permanent records of web technologies entangled with the issue of storage, privacy, digital identity, and more recently, the recombination of generative AI trained on our line traces. With Mimosa Pudica, the focus now turned to the vegetal world. This first year of research has been about building an alphabet, learning how to observe, how to get close. Darwin actually spent hours doing so, slowly cultivating patience. The research unfolds, in fact, through observation of Mimosa Pudica plants in my studio, and with the collaboration of 5 colleagues at the University of Middlesex in London and at Transro in Bucharest, who are growing their own mimosa. And also through dialogue like this with scholars, scientists across discipline. This year has been also about learning, as I'm not an expert, so how to care for Mimosa Pudica, simply how to make her survive, as is a really fragile plant, at least at this latitude. Last autumn at the conference, the ecologist Monica Gagliano said, "You are not the experimenting, you are part of the experiment with your subject." In her work on plant intelligence, and I know we should use this word intelligence with commas, and maybe also the anthropocentric bias connected to it, she described the scientist's body as a feeling body, a site of learning. And this affirmation resonates with the idea of performance as a research. The body, whether the animal or human or vegetal, is seen as both as method and a question. In this process, a crucial effort is not to replicate extractivist mechanisms such as those increasingly shaping web technologies, and also, as I was saying before, to remain aware of the anthropocentric biases that inevitably permeate my perspective. So, how and if it's possible to consider Mimosa Pudica not just an object of study, but a collaborator? Plants studies, like the one of Stefano Mancuso, Monica Gagliano, or the philosopher Paco Calvo, challenge humans, or at least Occidental knowledge, to unlearn our certainty about what counts as intelligence, to imagine memory as distributed, fragile, and impermanent. So now I leave you with this. Can we learn about our forms of remembering, forgetting when we study not about, but with plants? Thank you. This is my introduction.
Thank you, Valentina. Thank you, Valentina. It's really a pleasure for me to have the fortune to work with an artist educator like you. It's not always so common in my field, in my university, in my profession. So very happy. And we have decided to do a rather, relaxed discussion among us to try to engage with this issue about memory plants. And Valentina, the order for talking is you have a plan for today, right? Who's going to start?
Yes, it's like the alphabetical order. So it was. Let me take the.
And
yeah.
so Armiero is Marco,
winning. Sania,
okay.
Felipe, but it's not here. Eunice, Ruben,
perfect.
And then
perfect. So it's Armiero is winning with an A. Very good. So I can start, and I will try to stay in the time that we have decided to give to each of us. So I have often been criticized for my anthropocentric approach in my work. For someone like me, with my political and intellectual background, the main issue has always been to analyze power relationships and unveil the tools of oppression and rebellion while fostering the struggles for socio-environmental justice. As a scholar and activist deeply informed by Marxism, I am interested in exposing how capitalism exploits the subalterns, or rather, I should say, how capitalism produces subalterns in the service of its own reproduction and expansion. I don't want to be hypocritical. Generally, I am not. Generally, I am quite adamant about my opinions and positionality. So I don't want to be hypocritical. I have been struggling with the post-human and more than human turn, especially in environmental humanities. Sometimes I have the impression that these new interests exert a depoliticizing effect on the field. For instance, if I look, and maybe Eunice, you might confirm or disagree with me, no? But if we look at the programs of conferences in environmental history in the last few years, or even more in environmental humanities, it is easier in those programs to find papers on animals, on plants, on insects, rather than papers on workers, miners, or homeless people. The fashionable intellectual waves in academia could perhaps be the subject of another talk, so I am not going to say anything about this now. Some colleagues, better said, some comrades, believe that we should fight against these new tendencies. Perhaps some even believe that we now have new enemies to combat. I take a different approach. There is a fascist slogan that says many enemies means much honor. And being an anti-fascist, I cannot agree with it, of course. I am always looking for allies, friends, and comrades. To find an ally, you don't need a mirror, but you need a way to communicate with someone that who is different from you. This is the spirit with which I am engaging with this roundtable and more broadly with the more than human turn in environmental humanities. First of all, I realized that I've been working on the more than human, even and more specifically on plants, much more than I have acknowledged. My first book was a book about forests in 19th century Italy. The first thing I learned in that book, writing that book, was that memories of those forests were controversial, conflictual, and unsettled. The archival sources, and by the way, were those memories of the plants or of humans about the plants, the memories I was uncovering in the archives. But anyway, in the archival sources told stories of peasants and villagers destroying forests and constantly campaigning the, these archival sources for the abolition of any form of common property. This was the main message from the archives. So the common property had to be replaced by what was seen as a safer and triumphant private property. This was the main message. The forests themselves embodied the memories of this transformation since it implied the predominance of a certain kind of species, of tree species, and the disappearance of other kind of tree species. I am not sure what one see while walking today in the Monticchio forest. The Monticchio forest is a forest, an old forest in southern Italy. Between the 1860s and 1870s, Monticchio, the Monticchio forest, was the stronghold of an armed insurrection against the newly formed Italian state. As I wrote in my book, A Rag Nation, the brigands, and this was the name of these rebels, they were called brigands. Um, as I wrote in my book, uh, this what happened in this forest is that the rebels marked the forest with many mysterious signs. For instance, through the incision of on trees, they communicated with one another, or as legend says, they indicated the location of hidden treasures. So the memory of the rebels are actually really embodied into these trees. Then the Italian army arrived at Monticchio Forest, burning down portion of the forest, and thus transforming the war against the rebels into a war against nature. And I am sure that many of us are thinking of the memories of ecocide perpetrated by the US Army in Vietnam. But walking in the Monticchio forest today, visitors also encounter the constructed memories of that forest in the form of memorials and cultural events dedicated to the rebels. After all, memory can easily become a commodity to be sold on the touristic market. Evidently, war always leaves massive scars on everything, including plants. After World War I, the trees in the Alpine front embodied the memories of the war. French historians have written about what they called the machine gun trees, meaning trees that still contain metallic fragments from wartime operations. So what happened was that the trees had to pass through a metal detector before being processed by in sawmills to avoid incident. The destruction also triggered massive invasion of parasites that proliferated because of the large amount of wood left on the ground. And maybe just to be a little bit shorter here, because otherwise I am talking more than I was supposed to. Trees also tell the stories of resistance against the Nazi fascist regime in Italy. The Italian writer Italo Calvino, maybe many of our viewers know about Italo Calvino. So the Italian writer Italo Calvino once wrote that the resistance created a blend between the partisans and the landscape. Recently, there has been a rediscovery of these landscapes of resistance with walking paths that explore the field where the partisans fought. There is one case, that of a chestnut tree in the Veneto region, the area around Venice. In this chestnut tree, there is these chestnut trees literally preserve the memories of the partisans. It contains an hidden compartment in its trunk used by the partisan to engage to exchange information. I have prepared this short intervention, and this is my last part. I prepared this short intervention while looking at the forest outside my house in Santiago de Compostela, in Spain. It is not a wild forest, but rather a quite domesticated one with stone signs marking the path for pilgrims, the true apex creatures of this absurd tourist-driven ecosystem here in Santiago de Compostela. I wonder what those trees are telling these people, what they are willing to see and listen. I am sure they will be impressed by this strange Spain, so green and rainy that it resembles Ireland rather than the rest of the country. They will enjoy, the pilgrims, the tourists, they will enjoy the shade of the trees. Nature is beautiful indeed, and it can have healing effects on people, including me. And by the way, I have chosen to live precisely in front of this forest. However, those trees are not nature. Eucalypti in Galicia, the region where I live, are the remains of the Francoist regime, the Spanish version of fascism. They were fast-growing trees intended for the paper industry, weaponized against traditional common property. These trees have their own memories, which erupt in wildfires very often, and yet I still believe that we need an alliance between humans and non-humans in order to grasp the full stories that these trees and perhaps any plants carry with them. And I stop here and leave the word to Sanya, right? If I'm not Sanya, please.
Yes, thank you. Beautiful story, Marco. Okay, I will shortly just introduce myself so you can understand why is my story as it is. I'm anthropologist, cultural anthropologist, and during my work life, I was always researching, of course, human culture. Lately, in the last 5 or so years, I started to observe relationship between humans and the rest of living beings in this world. So I am anthropologist. I do investigate human culture, but I think that that culture is deeply related, conditioned, and influenced by the rest of the living beings in this world. So when I think of plant memory, then I think of it in relational terms, because I just explained that I'm thinking about processes that occur between animals, plants, humans, because we all inhabit the same world. More precisely, maybe, I think of plant memory as emergent from multi-species relations. This means that I don't observe just plants because they don't live alone in this world. Along them live, as I just said, people, animals, bacteria, fungi, etc., etc. Let's think, for example, of plants in the garden or in the vineyard. I understand the garden not as a fixed entity, but as something I call an event space. This event space is a relational field where meaning, presence, and practice continually unfold between inhabitants of that garden. So whoever is in the garden is contributing to the practices, meanings, etc. of that garden. I am giving an example of garden and a little bit later of vineyards because recently I wrote a book which is called Living with Plants, and it describes the life of plants between people and plants, of course, in urban area, in the city of Rijeka in Croatia, where I live. So this garden, an event space, is a relational field where meaning, presence, and practice continually unfold, as I said, between inhabitants. Yeah? The garden is neither a static representation nor a mere backdrop to human activity. So garden is not just a place where humans do something. Garden is a living configuration where human and more than human beings interact, co-shaping one another. To think of the garden as an event space is to think of plants not in isolation, but always in relation to soil, to climate, to microorganisms, to rhythms of care and human presence. Plant being is thus never solitary. It is emergent from ecological and social entanglements, as is human being, as is animal being, etc., etc. It is through such a relational perspective that I approach the notion of plant memory. I'm interested in plant memory that does not reside in individual organisms alone, but in the temporal and affective processes through which plants, spaces, and humans sustain and transform each other. I can give you ethnographic examples of urban gardens and vineyards, for example, which will help to illuminate how memory emerges from these multi-species relations. For example, vineyards in Kastavština. Kastavština is a region on the Adriatic Sea, just above my city of Rijeka. The city itself is, of course, situated on the Adriatic Sea in Croatia. In these vineyards in Kastavština is traditional production of certain type of wine, which is a coupage. Coupage is a blend, is a type of wine which is a blend of diverse varieties of grapes. So it's not just one type of grape that is, but it's so this traditional coupage wine called Belica here offers an interesting perspective on plant memory. Coupage produced from each vineyard here in Kastavština is unique because each vineyard remembers differently. Namely, these vineyards are of the field blend type. Field blend type vineyards are special type of vineyards. This means that different varieties of grapes are cultivated in the same vineyard, and they are all grown, harvested at the same time, made into wine together, etc., etc. While usually when you make coupage, you grow different kind of grape varieties, but each on their own spot, and then you harvest them when it's right time for that variety to harvest, and then only in the end you put them together in one wine. This is all grown together and harvested, as I said, at the same time, etc., etc. As one of my interlocutors explained and told me, Belica, this coupage, is whatever you harvest, you make it all together. So when one particular vine withers, dries out in that vineyard, something happens to the plant, it dies, people stretch the first nearby vine to replace it. It doesn't matter if it's another variety. So for example, there is one variety of wine which died, only one plant died. Winemaker will take the first nearby, stretch it to this place, even if it's of another variety. This way, plants themselves actively contribute to the contribution of the coupage, because now this year we will have more of this type of grape in the coupage, and it's different from the last year. So plants themselves contribute to the composition of the coupage and shape the aroma of Belica in a given year. It is not the winemaker who decides on the percentages of grape varieties in the coupage. Plants do it. So the ones that are stronger, it will be more of them, or ones that year it was too sunny for one type of the grape, then more resistant was another. This year, wine will be made in this way. So every Belica, every coupage, thus becomes a mnemonic assemblage, a polyphony where the voices of different grape varieties intertwine in the collective speech of wine. This is memory enacted through care. Winemakers and wines together remember histories of collaboration. So I'm not looking only at the memory of the plant, I'm looking at the collaboration between man, between human and plant, and how they make their histories. So memory here is not a static record, but an ongoing relational process shaped through care and reshaped through ecological and social change. Through this example, plant memory emerges as a way of understanding how vineyards hold and transmit histories, affects, and relations. It highlights how plants remember not in isolation, but in the very entanglement that sustains them, entanglements that always include humans. Plant memory is thus inseparable from multi-species care, through which communities, human and more than human, endure, adapt, regenerate, etc. In this sense, the event space of the garden or of the vineyard, whatever you wish, and the mnemonic field of the vineyard show that plants are not silent witnesses, but active participants in remembering, in belonging, and shaping their shared futures. Now, I would just like to add one minute little addition. Of course, we all know that at the same time, distinguishing between individual memory and relational memory sharpens this perspective. Research in plant neurobiology and ecological cognition, Valentina already mentioned also ecologists who are doing such research. That research demonstrates that individual plants and plant tissues are capable of registering, storing, and responding to information. Yet, the ethnographic cases, which are important to me as I'm an anthropologist, these ethnographic cases of urban gardens and Belica vineyards suggest that plant memory also exceeds the level of one organism. It is relational memory arising from the interplay of plants, people, soil, and histories over time. Individual memory allows a plant to adapt to its environment, for sure, while relational memory allows communities, human and more than human, to endure and reconfigure themselves across generations. And that is all from me. I don't know who is next.
Thank you, Sania. I think that Valentina and I, we didn't decide who's going to be the chair on
Philippe.
roundtable.
Yes, I
But
don't know, but it's
but
Philippe.
Philippe, yes, true.
Hello all. I'm sorry for being late, but we are living a very special moment here in my city now. You know, Salvador, I don't know who knows Salvador, Marco has already been here, but it can be a very magical city, and sometimes you have magical moments. So it's a colonial town looking from outside, but inside we see there are many other universes, and I'm now in this one of these magical moments, receiving here in my place an extraordinary intellectual called Ailton Krenak, and so that's why I was a bit away now, and tomorrow we recognize him, Dr. Honoris Causa in the Federal University of Bahia. It's a beautiful mark, and it is also related to two things that I wanted to share with you. One is that once I went to visit Ailton in his home, he was telling me that he has been invited to give a lecture in the biochemistry school, and he was thinking what he could teach to the biochemicals and medical school, and he wanted to talk about plants. And I said, wow, that's marvelous. And I was expecting to hear from him more about those, let's say, the plants who holds power, such as ayahuasca, San Pedro, and others. And then he was starting to explain to me that, and he says this marvelous word that all plants have power. I was arriving at his village coming from a Kayapó, another indigenous group from the Amazon, and I had my body painted with genipapo, which is a Brazilian fruit. It's a Brazilian fruit. It's a tropical fruit from the Amazon. It's much older than the invention of the country. And the genipapo has been in relation with indigenous people for thousands of years. They are able to extract a black color from it, and they paint the bodies, and they have such marvelous graphic lectures from nature, when they can represent in our bodies. And he started to think on how plant can activate our subjectivity to heal in other dimensions. So the painting of my body wasn't healing me only by the forms of the graphic, but how Genipapo was healing me in another dimension. And he was discussing about this philosophy of the plants in a way that plant the plant was not an animated subject that we would look for the plant and we'd grab the plant, but the plant would appear in front of us, and the plant would have this would understand that I was needing it to be healed, and so the plant would appear in front of us, such as the mimosa plant. In every plant, they would interact with our subjectivity and heal through another dimension. So the Genipapo was healing me not only by the beautiful graphic, but touching in that other dimension of my existence. And part of this discussion, that this beautiful testimony actually that he gave me, it was published in the Routledge Handbook of Latin America and the Environment, and where we start to think about how plants can heal and how plants, they have the protagonism, let's say, to appear in front of us, to interact with us, and taking the plants serious in their imagination. and their capacity to interact with humans. Uh, I, I never forgot about it. It was before the pandemic. It was in 2019. It was the first year of Bolsonaro government when I went there. It was a very depressing moment. Uh, Very recently, I told Marco that I have been working with a wonderful indigenous nation in the Amazon called the Arara. The Arara, and they live in the Iriri River by the around Altamira, the city that has been destroyed by Belo Monte. And they have been suffering from the since the starting that they started to build the Belo Monte Dam in 2012, 2011. They have been suffering genocide and an ethnocide that they have no memory in their history of the intensity of the pressure. And it's not something only physical, but it's through capitalism and through other forms of disconnecting the nation, the people from their traditional knowledge. And they now they have terrible, well, health. Uh, they have a terrible health issues and diabetes. They are dying for alcohol. They went to look for Christians to try to save them. It's one of the worst crimes from the Brazilian state in the past decades. I'm very depressed with that, and I've been trying to interact and helping them to move out of this situation. And they did what, and to try to reconnect them with their life. They did one amazing ritual. They were losing this ritual, and it's a ritual they have not practiced for the past 10 years at least. It's called Iei Bari. The Iei Bari celebrates the interaction with one sacred tree. Uh, the spirit of the tree calls them to organize this ritual, and they mobilize the entire community. Men goes hunting for days, women stay preparing the sacred drink in the village, and in one moment, after 5 years of preparation, one small group they go to the forest to find this tree, the Yebari. They ask permission for the spirit of the tree to take it down, for sacrifice the tree, and they take the tree to the center of of the village. There they decorate the tree, they paint the tree, they hug the tree, they dance for the tree, and they thank the tree, and they ask for wishes for the trees as well, and they celebrate this tree for 2 days. Uh, I was trying to understand this marvelous ritual through the memories of Yao, one of the main leaders, intellectual leaders of the Arara. And I found that writing his memories, I could offer him through my university a PhD for notorious knowledge. And so we have just approved that. So I was trying to, let's not research over them. Let's try to make a collective research, writing his memories. So he has been awarded for his, what we call in Brazil, notorious knowledge. In English, I'm still looking for a better word. And the name of his life memories, and we're doing that together, is that we are the roots of the forest. Because at the end of his life memories, through a long period of genocide, suffering the impacts from the Brazilian dictatorship, then Belo Monte, when they move on to reconnect them with their collective life just through the love that they have. And he used this word, love with this tree. We love the forest. We are the roots of the forest. And so they celebrate this Iebari, which I don't know the name in Portuguese. These are two short stories that I wanted to share with you. They're very, let's say, personal, and I'm still reflecting upon them. But I'm not very good in theorize that much. But I wanted to share with you this marvelous feeling that I've learned with Ailton Krenak and with Yao Arara to respect more plants and how we can build a new ethics on related with great respect plants. Thanks a lot, Marco, Valentina, Sânia, Rubens, Eunice, querida.
Thank you, Felipe. And that maybe what we should say is that Felipe will not be able to stay all time with us because precisely Ailton Krenak is with him. And if I understood correctly, I think that Felipe, you have also other visitors coming. Uh, Somebody actually rather relevant for the work that Felipe been doing, especially with people have been, killed in the Amazon defending, their culture, nature, and so, Felipe, you leave whenever it's needed. Thank you for being with us anyway. I was looking to translate PhD for notorious knowledge. It's not easy. You are right. Chat GPT told me that it can be translated as a PhD for unconventional knowledge. I don't like this translation so much because the idea of conventional makes me a little bit anxious, but it's funny. Sometimes I really like to engage with chat GPT just for the fun of seeing what the mainstream oppression is trying to convince us. Valentina, now I think is the Nodari, and maybe you can decide, because we are going with the last name. I don't know if it's you, Eunice, or Rubens that will go
Thank
first.
you, Felipe, by the way.
Thank you, Felipe.
And yes,
Sorry,
Eunice
sorry.
or Rubens, yes. And
Okay, I can start. Ruben sitting close to me, he said that I can start. Okay, I think I have to tell a little bit of my story about my environment recognition. When I started, I'm a full professor at the Federal University of Santa Catarina, Universidade Federal of Santa Catarina, for 30 years. Now I'm senior visitor professor in another university called Universidade Vale do Rio Doce in Minas Gerais. Then I'm doing the two things. How I start doing with environmental history, I think this is important because my story is almost close to the one that Marco was telling about forest, something like that. In 1998, I finished my PhD. I didn't work with environmental history. I was working with migration, just migration from one state to another. And one day, discussing with Rubens, he was complaining that he didn't have only sources for some woods, but other things. He will present himself, but he's an agronomist. And I said, okay, but we have all this data. In history, we can find this data. Then he said, okay, but how can we do? Then I said, okay, I had so many things in my thesis that I didn't use, especially cut of trees. Said, okay, I will make a project. Then I make a project, send it to our CNPq, and they approve it. Then since 1999, I started working in environmental history. This means a long years. And at the same time, we founded a lab called Laboratório de Migração e História Ambiental. It's Laboratório of Immigration, Migration, Environmental History. It's the first one in Brazil. Probably our group was the first one that has a group working. There are other historians that start working at the same time that I started, like Lisa Cedrez and Padua, but we have a group here, a very strong group here in Santa Catarina. And then my first idea was exactly working with the Araucaria forest. It's a pine tree, it's a very common in South Brazil. We have just two kinds of Araucaria in South America. One is the Araucaria angustifolia that is here in Santa Catarina in the south of Brazil. And we have the Araucaria araucana that's in Chile. But I'm working with Araucaria forest. The whole time, this means about 20 years that I'm working with Araucaria forest. What I'm working with Araucaria forest, first I started working environmental migration, then I start working on how the forest was cutting down by the German, Italian immigrant in the state. But my idea was not working there, what they were doing, was trying to work the change of landscape. The whole time I worked how cutting the trees, cutting the big forest changed the area. Then we have started with monoculture, soy, wheat, corn, and the cities. This one that I was working was unexpected nature. We have a nature that was not expected to be like that. And then what I see, and recently, what was what? Let me rephrase. Then I started doing all this research with Rubens too, because he was working in the other area. It's a good idea that we can work together. And I just start again with, I never abandoned the Araucaria forest, but I started seeing work with disasters, environmental disasters. The first environmental disaster, the big one that we had for me, was one of the hydropower that was built in the between Rio Grande do Sul and Santa Catarina, where after a lot of studies, not a real studies, they put a lot of the area of Araucaria forest under the water. The hydropower took the place. And then we had the big disaster of Mariana, that Minas Gerais, probably already heard about that. I was working with that because I advised 3 theses about this. And what was more impressive for me about this disaster, it was a lot of losses, but for me was really impressive was the way that one of the indigenous people was affected, the Krenak people. I'm working with an article now with them. The Krenak people, they use the Rio Doce River for everything. For them, the Rio Doce is dead now. Now they cannot have the baptism, all the other things. And we visit the indigenous area, and they even they don't have water. That they cannot use the water from the river because it's polluted. What they have, big trucks take water for them in this indigenous area. Can you imagine that? But this is one of my parts of work. But going back again, Araucaria forest. Then in the Araucaria forest, in the few years, we started working with the vineyards. I was really excited when Sanja was talking about her vineyards. I work with vineyards too. This is very important. But the problem is that some of the vineyards in some regions, especially in the center of the state, center of this Brazil, is taking place in the Cerrado. In Cerrado, we are having now vineyards. That was always what was impossible for some years ago. Now they have it there, and they have a different kind of they call the winter wines, when you can harvest in the winter. Is a big difference thing. But this I will tell another way, another story. But it's very important. One thing that I think one thing that I'm really proud is not just my environment student, but is how many students, PhD students, I advise, about 30. And these students all around the whole country, what they are doing, most of them are working with the environmental history. This means that the environmental history in Brazil that start very little with our group, and now is all around the country, even in the Northeast, they have some students there. And just to going about the feeling, about the memory of plants then. I never thought about, I was just asking Rubens, I don't think that Araucaria can have a memory about, but then I feel really sad when I see nice forest going down. And there is some resin that goes out of the tree. I don't know if it can, I never thought about it, but it's something that I was thinking exactly because of your invitation, Valentina. This resin can be called the tree feeling, maybe. I have to see mother, but I think this, I never thought that I was saying to you, but now I have to think about it because this resin is very important. They use it for industry and other things. And I think what I was saying is, you are saying, Mark, about the meetings, the environmental meetings. But I saw a different change now in the last few years. The study of animals, the animals in the feeling, the use of animals, this was not used. And one thing that I'm working in the vineyards is that Sanja is the connection of the animals inside of the vineyards, the place that they are there. And in Brazil, it's not so common, but in the United States, it's very common. You have the animals going around, and especially one that works with organic vineyards, they think that they are very, very important. There's something that I think we have to work later on, that maybe with two Sanja gardens and vineyards, we can make a project together. That's it. I hope that it's fine. But I was saying, I'm sorry I didn't organize. I was just writing it down. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anisha. Very
Thank you,
good.
Anisha.
And Rubens, please.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I was born in a family farm, a small farm, and I became later on. No, listen, Marco. I guess
Yes.
we saved this presentation.
It's for the second part, Marco.
For the second. Sorry, Rubens. Okay.
And so then I became a full professor many years later. But what moved me to get in science was that one day, one agronomist, I was maybe 7, 8 years old, one agronomist arrived in our farm, small farm, and with his huge arrogance, he told to my dad, "You should replace your corn variety." So it's landrace and produce a lot of biomass and a small amount of seeds. And he told to my mom as well, "You need to replace the cow because your cows produce a small amount of milk." So my daddy did, my mom did, and later on we realized that to grow these modern varieties of corn or animals, we need to feed with a lot amount of feed. So culturally, it was not the way that my dad and my mom running the farm with a lot of, they didn't use a lot of fertilizer, chemicals, pesticides, and it was a disaster. And I remember that for the second time that I met this agronomist, I asked, "So what is these hybrid seeds varieties?" And he didn't explain very well. And I keep in mind with what is a hybrid. So I decided to go through to study. My mom and my dad supported me. So I took agronomy and I learned the conventional agronomy. And I realized at that time, it was 77, that probably it was not sustainable. So I took my master in plant breeding, and I went to Davis, California to take a PhD in genetics. So then I learned in my first class to obtain a genetically modified organism. At that time, was 88. So the genetic modification was an issue. However, I took one course that one of the faculty provoked me as a student, and later I was talking with him about if in the biology there is a rule or rules. And he told me that in biology, there's a single rule that is universal: interactions. There is no other biological rule that is universal. Even the genetic code doesn't work in mitochondrial genome, for example. So I took the advantage of the deep knowledge that I acquired in genetics. Then when I come back, we start to do use genetics to understand the sustainable management of a forest or non-timber forest products. So I work with this with farmers, and we use the genetic approach to realize how many plants we need to keep in the field to avoid some inbreeding, some problems in the sustained management. And then I go back to the land races of corn and other species. So in addition to my lab work with molecular genetics to provide some conservation issues or prove some effects of GMO varieties, I work with small farmers to do participatory breeding and take the advantage that they have knowledge, traditional knowledge, and also cropping and agroecological principle and process. And so I was involved in develop land races of corn and of one tree that is feijoa. Feijoa is acaceloviana, is a fruit tree that is native from Brazil and Uruguay. And later on and more recently, I was involved in a huge discussion and research about the effect of pesticides on some very important species, that is bees, and because the interaction. So this is my last issue to share with you, the two issues that are most important. Currently, epigenetics is more important than genetics because epi is over genetics. Because once one organism is built, is born, what has happened? The genetic is established, so the genes are there. So, but the genes will interact to the environment, and not only the genes, but all genes, all the genomes of the organism interacts with other species and with the environment. And as you may know, for each human cell, we have 10 bacterial cells. So we have more or less 100 trillion bacteria cells with us. And we're still alive. So it happens the same with plants. Now, in the past 10 years, I'm spending more time with epigenetics and the interaction between plants and other species. So, in concluding, so I'm in this position probably because this agronomist came into our farm and provoked the whole family with the arrogance. So, but I took the advantage to learn and to use this scientific knowledge. But plants probably, and also animals and humans, of course, since we are products of the evolution, we need to take advantage of the fact that in going to the Mimosa Pudica, we have a group of sensitive plants that evolved because they were living in the environment. It was provoked by the other species, by environmental components. So I guess we start to learning more about the plant memories, and also there is a big question in the scientific community about plant intelligence, and probably the language that we use, probably not all of us will understand the same way what is the plant intelligence, was intelligence. And now we talk about the artificial intelligence. That is also a question for the future. But yes, plants have the ability to react to the environment. And the main factor for any living organism is the interaction between this organism with the environment and with the other species. And this is maybe when we give this the importance that this issue deserves, probably we can change agriculture, we can change the way of life, and you can change the other things. That's it.
Thank you, Rubens. Nice. I was picturing the agronomist arriving in your small farm. I have even a face in my mind now, and for sure a dress. Valentina, how do we proceed? You are the boss here.
So, I don't know if I'm the boss. Not for sure, I'm not the boss. But maybe I'm an activator, but not for sure a boss. But so I plan to talk about this experiment regarding Mimosa Pudica, but listening to you, I have also some observation that I would like to share. I don't know if we can also, since you told to have an informal conversation, maybe I will not just read what I wrote, but so first of all, I thank you everyone, and I thank you, Marco, for the disclaimer about this fashionable topics. It's something I also fear, like, okay, I'm dealing with plants because this is fashionable now, but at the same time, no, I ask myself this, and I thought that something that is connected to what Rubens was saying, and also to what Sania was saying. So on one side, the experiment I was quoting is I will quote, is related to individual memory of plants, and it's made in laboratory. And there are, for example, there is this Paco Calvo philosopher who built a laboratory in Spain, in a department of philosophy, built a laboratory on plants. And he was talking about the necessity of, in his book, Planta Sapiens, he talks about the necessity of doing these experiments outside, so in a relational environment, interaction, as Rubens was saying. So why is not just about fashion? It's exactly because of this importance, and also the categories you were mentioning, like worker, so on. So maybe we can use the word subalterns. Can be applied also to plants, like the way humans extract, like have extracted like plants, but also, okay, now I'm learning that also plants orient human. It's so, but there is this issue of an ecological issue, of course. Also, something else I wanted to share is what emerged here is really this relational attitude, the politics, and also about the term. I pay a lot of attention not to use the term more than human. And this is something that this philosopher pointed to me. So I like to share with you also as a question, as if we categorize other species according to if they are less or more about, and we are at the center. So maybe this is the framework I'm trying to use, not since I met this philosopher in Basel, because I also attended a workshop organized by a group on plant intelligence in Basel, and there they invited this philosopher, and he made us think about what does it mean to use this more than human, if this is already an anthropocentric bias, because it puts us in the center. And also about this word intelligence, yeah, it's really a complicated word. And another conference, now I don't remember who told this, but was thinking about vegetalizing our world. So what if, and this is a question I'm posing also to myself, like, while we think about how to learn an alphabet, or I'm thinking how to learn an alphabet to interact with plants, because I really have no clue. So it's 1 year, it's really, I'm at the basics, at the basics. I'm learning really the basics. I'm not an expert like you, but I like to reflect on the methodology. And so what if we need other words? Maybe intelligence is already belonging too much to our species, and we need another word to talk about this. We need a new alphabet, and also differentiating, because now intelligence is branded from AI platforms that are actually recombination of stochastic recombination of everything we process online. We can talk about memories of our conscious that is online. So these are my feedback on what I heard up to now. And I don't know if you know already, it could be interesting if I show you the experiment that is at the base of this research. Like I read about this experiment by Mimosa Pudica, by Monica Gagliano, made in the laboratory of Stefano Mancuso, and this is where everything came from. And this is an experiment that is, Marco, you can tell me maybe if I can talk about it or it's too late, or also, okay, there is Rubens that wants to say something. So maybe Rubens.
Yeah. Valentina, yes, but let me say one thing before that you raised. So it is very important to mention that the current knowledge is provisional. So we are advancing knowledge every day. But in addition, what the people call hard science now is empowered by these biotechs and biotechnology now and the artificial intelligence. So the humanities science or the other science is more or less non-commercial or cannot give you profit.
Yes, so I'm in that scene, for sure.
So in the capitalism way of life, it's very important that we can meet and can discuss, because, you know, probably in the search of the truth about this issue about the Mimosa Pudica, for example, we can take the hard part, the hard knowledge, but we can take also the other knowledge, because probably we not fully understand how the plants can stay alive without moving out of the soil or the place. So it's still a very challenging issue. And just to make this point, that will be very important if you can share with us your project.
So yes, the project is really about this performative way of learning. So it's unfolding through. I have here, it's closed, but I have here a mimosa that is staying now. Yesterday it was flowering, today is not so well. I don't know why. I'm still trying to understand. Anyway, and so I have more than one mimosa because the first, to be honest, died. So I'm struggling also how to keep them alive now here, but usually it's outside. And I asked to a lecturer at Middlesex University that is an art historian to also cultivate a mimosa. And I involved also these curators and artists that are based in Romania, in Bucharest, who since after the pandemic, they moved the art space in a land that is that was subject to extractivist practice, and now they co-own this land and do all the art practice there. And so they are also observing and cultivating a mimosa. And parallelly, I'm through all the alliances and partnership I built before applying to this grant, there are all these roundtables or conversation happening also informally with people from many different disciplines. Also, my background is really interdisciplinary. This maybe I didn't mention, like I didn't study art. I come from law, and then I have a master in landscape art and architecture and another in digital currency. So my way of viewing things is really interconnected. And for sure, relational is also a term that comes a lot because it's also a way of defining a certain art practices that since the 90s are in relation, like are not just, practices that are that you observe. Maybe I'm saying something that you already know. In that case, I apologize, but I don't take for granted. This was theorized by Nicolas Bourriot, a French theoretician and curator. And so this kind of practices, so relational for me is a very familiar term, that are based on the interaction and relation between the author, the collaborators, that the author's authorship also become widespread. And this maybe has also something to do with plants, because plants are also decentralized, they function all together, not from what I understand. So please forgive me if I'm saying something not precise. So this is how the research is a performative research. This is how I call it, and this is how it's developing to conversational, so discursive practices, and to observation of Mimosa Pudica. And I don't know where it will land, because this is how I work, through a sort of guided improvisation in which I accumulate knowledge and slowly artwork comes up. But so for now, the form that this research is taking in the art spaces are performing lecture in which I tell the story of what I learned in a circle with the public and the plants. And the experiment that made me think to all this project is, now I'll try to share my screen. So is this experiment that was, and now I'll take my notes, so not to be completely imprecise. So it's an experiment that has an origin. René de Fontaine, a French botanist at the end of the 18th century, tested Mimosa Pudica by placing plants on a carriage and observing whether their leaves would fall in response to the vibrations of the carriage. He noticed that over time that plants stopped reacting and their leaves were no longer closed. This early observation of habituation was later described by Lamarck. More recently, in 2013, the ecologist Monica Gagliano, which I quoted before, while was a guest at the International Laboratory of Neurobiology in Florence, guided by Stefano Mancuso, returned by dialoguing with him to this question. They constructed a device that allowed Mimosa Pudica to fall without damaging. At first, the plants treated each fall as a danger, closing their leaves, but after repeated drops, they learned that the event was not harmful and stopped reacting. And even more striking, in low light condition, when the energy must be conserved for photosynthesis, the plants decided to keep their leaves open, even when the event was perceived as dangerous. So the plants, as the title of this article says, learn faster and forget more slowly when it matters. This experiment demonstrated also that this Mimosa Pudica can store what has learned for about 14 days. And as was saying before, this mechanism in a living being without a brain are still a mystery, are not studies. And some scientists argue that it's not memory, but merely habituation. Yet Marcuso and others, and this is also connected to what we were saying before, reveals that plant memory is also connected to epigenetic memory. So this hereditary variation that alter the gene expression without changing the genetic sequence, from what I understood. So for instance, many plants, for example, flower only after a certain number of days of winter after winter cold has passed. But how do they remember how this time has passed? I'm trying to explore this question in these days, dialoguing with the plant physiology here, Cetta De Pinto, at the University of Bari. She's taking the patience and time to explain on it, trying to let me understand without really scientific knowledge about this. So this was the starting point. I read about this experiment, and since I was doing these research on web technologies for a long time, and that are based on this, at least theoretically now, we know that it's not this, but the web, blockchain, and also and also the blockchain are like attempt to build a decentralized system, and also plants function in a decentralized way, and also plants memory function like this. And so I'm trying to understand if this hypothesis, like what if studying plant memory that is interesting in itself, but also what if we can also learn about this data accumulation and so on.
Thank you, Valentina. And if I'm not wrong, I think that we were thinking, no, Valentina, to try to finish more or less at half past, so to try to go not much more. But you had another question for us, and I know that Rubens also prepared something. So maybe one thing we can do, I mean, I can be very quick in really, a minute maybe, to say a few things. And I don't know, Sanya, maybe you also told me that you had thought a little bit about the second question, or the second question was, you can, how can I say, state the second question for us, which was?
So let me read it. Is there an artifact, a book, a film, an artwork related to Mimosa Pudica research you would suggest?
Exactly. Thank you. So I can go first because I couldn't find anything really relevant, I think. So it's easy for me to go first. Maybe I can take these 2 minutes to say something very quickly. One is that my, how can I say, my reservation about, the more than human, or, the non-human turn is not in a sense dismissive of those turns. I was only sharing, a kind of, of a challenge for me, because I do believe that sometimes I have missed a little bit the power relationships, the need to uncover injustice, a little bit of an anxiety for the disappearing of these themes in our conferences. But I completely agree. I mean, Carolyn Merchant, a very famous environmental historian and also philosopher, she said once in a fantastic book, Radical Ecology, that the oppression of humans in capitalism is always coming with the oppression of non-humans in capitalism. So capitalism is oppressing both human and non-human. So I completely agree with this. Myself, I do believe in multi-species alliances against capitalism. I wrote and published actually an article with David Pello about this, about multi-species alliances in capitalism. And this is my example. Very quickly, as I said, there is one very strange place in Rome, Italy, which is called the Ex Snia Viscosa. Nia Viscosa was a factory, a textile factory, and it was abandoned for, I think 50 years, if I'm not mistaken, 50 years. And of course, nature went back. You see a lot of, trees, plants going on. You need to imagine like the ruins of a factory completely immersed in this nature. If you are familiar with, fairy tales, it looks like a little bit the Sleeping Beauty castle, no? Just there's no castle, but just a factory. Well, it's not one plant, it's something a little bit more. It's a set, an ensemble of plants going around the factory. Actually, there is a huge lake that came up from the underground. I believe that all this is actually sharing a memory, and it's a memory of a factory built on an aquifer because the factory needed a lot, the production needed a lot of water. It's a shared memory because it's the memory of the capitalist organization of labor. A certain way of organizing labor is also a rebellious memory because I stop here. This abandoned factory is now become a park. It's a reclaimed park that was actually squatted illegally by the people living around, and there's a struggle going on. So for me, the ex Nia Viscosa story is a perfect way to try to put together my own approach, which is a kind of Marxist approach with a multi-species approach. And by the way, there is one folk singer uh, telling this story. You can look up on YouTube, Il lago che combatte, the fighting lake, and he say that there is an alliance with the migratory birds arriving to the lake, and the people squatting the park to transform it in a natural park. I stop here. I hope that I didn't talk more than a couple of minutes. Sania.
Yes, I also tried to find something about Mimosa Pudica research. I really didn't find anything, so I wouldn't go into that. But I would like also to take just 1 minute and say something absolutely, Marco. I mean, there are numerous books and articles written. I mean, people are now talking about, instead of Anthropocene, about Capitalocene, precisely because of these things that you're interested in, like oppression, industrialization, and power control. Relations of power are so significant for our age, and it's all transmitted not only to plants but to nature in itself. So these things are very, very connected, very, very. And yeah, I wanted to say one more thing about plant memory, and maybe related to this thing that I just mentioned. I also did a research on parks, on urban parks in the city of Rijeka here in Croatia, because maybe it's correlated to the thing, Marco, we are talking about now, because when you investigate how in different times people imagined parks and for what they use parks. For example, this was in 19th century Austro-Hungarian Empire. No? So parks were used as a celebration of imperial power, of industrial power. How can we see that through plants? Because certain types of plants from all over the world were chosen, were brought here together to show off the power. So it's really related in very interesting ways. I don't want to take any more space. I just wanted to quickly say that there are more interesting things about all this. And Valentina, if you need anything, you can always just send me an email. Thank you.
Thank you, Zana. I will.
I think that Rubens and Eunice Rubens, maybe it's now time for me to share the screen, right? Huh? I should share the screen, maybe. Yeah. And please tell me, because I cannot see you, so tell me when I need to move.
Fala aqui.
I have, let's see.
Não, tu pode
I have
falar.
to change spaces. It's working now.
Yes.
My book that I'm trying to present.
Maybe you need to close one of the mic, no? Is it right? Because at least for me there is a echo, no? And unfortunately, when I share the screen, I cannot see you anymore. So you need to
I have to
guide me.
change place because it was not working there.
Okay.
Let me sit here.
Nossa, senta aqui, eu vi.
My presentation, the book that I was trying to present today, is exactly every time that, like a historian, I had to find where the name came from. And then I found this book, that's Historia Naturalis Brasilia, that was written in 1648. Was the first time that George McCraft described the herba viva. Can you go to the next one? Again, if you want to check the books there, go on next one, Marco. They describe it as herba viva. Here you can see in the both sides is the picture of it. They make it, one first, the other part two. And the description of it is in Latin. You can see. Go to next one. And here again too. Here I translated from Latin to English. I don't think that we have time to read it, the whole thing, but it's very important because you can see in 1648, it was already known here in Brazil. It's a long time that we have it. Exactly this was my thing to share. Now I will give to Rubens the word.
And so this species was included among the other medicinal plants that the people discover here with the inhabitants from Brazil. Next one. Again, you can go. Next one. So aqui this is the fruit is a legume. So it's a leguminous tree. Can you go? And I don't know if Valentina, do you know this article? So
No, I don't know.
So this article shows in mechanical terms how the leaf is closed and open, and they have a name for this, it's spinel, but doesn't matter. You have the reference here you can load down. So it's a little bit hard, but it's easy to understand because it's a kind of physical way. Can you go one more? So they describe the kinetics of closing and open. And basically is related to the movement, because there is two layers of cells, and depends if water, and they have pores to connect before two layers of cells, and when the water moves from the upper layer of cell to the down, so it's a movement without muscles. So it's amazing that occurs. Can you go on? As I said previously, there is no there is no universal rule in biology. So Mimosa Pudica belongs to this group of plants that is called sensitive plants. One are more sensitive than others. And so the movement of the curvature is rely on mechanical issue. And if you remove water from the upper part, it goes down, so the pressure is moving. Can you go on? And the stimuli, so the stimul, it could be one insect, could be your hand, could be something else. Triggers a movement, so I call this a kind of electric. So this author uses this electric discharge as a stimulus, and it works as well. So it's amazing, that plant. And maybe there is one more. Maybe there is one more slide.
Yeah.
Well, doesn't matter. I think the main issue that we...
Yes.
No, that's fine. No, yeah. So what I'm saying is just want to share this issue, and maybe two more issues very quickly. One is about the plant intelligence, because plant memory is one thing. Plant intelligence maybe is another issue. But there is a huge discussion among people in the Occident, so the science that we live in Americas here, and other people. But no, the other ones I don't know. What I want to finish one thing, Valentina. There is some article in literature. In addition, one book, there is one book that called Evolution in 4 Dimensions. It's a 20 years old book. I can send you the Evolution in 4 Dimensions. And the authors claim something like that. There is more than genes in the inheritance. Like animals, when they are born, they already know how to behave. Okay? In plants, there is 1 or 2 articles or more, maybe now, that the epigenetic effects that give you a kind of phenotype is inherited by the son, but if the phenotype is not in the son, could appear in the grandchildren. So the mother cells, so these epigenetic effects is inherited through the mother cells to the son and grandchild, even though it's not a genetic modification. It's an epigenetic phenotype. I'm not sure, because I didn't have time to go through, if this could be related to the plant memories. Okay? So the evolution of a plant in the earth is more than maybe 500 millions of years. So probably they learn, they interact with the other species in the environment and take advantage of that. And also with the component of the environment that, so, and probably some of them, because, there is a mutation that can happen in one plant and then another, and can go to the descendants. So these sensitive plants probably is a group of plants that have the opportunity to inherit some change that gives the plant this ability, probably memorize as well some of the behavior. So sorry that I took so long for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for the problem with the PowerPoint. For some reason, didn't obey to my command. I don't know why. It was resistant.
We can share this for us because it was just maybe
very good
because there is the article.
That will be useful. Thank you.
Very good. So I am going to close our meeting. If we are ready to close, maybe I want to give the word to Valentina first, and then I can say goodbye to everyone. Valentina, do you want to add anything?
Just that, yes, you quoted your article, Multi-Special Alliance, that it was an article that enlightened me while writing on plants intelligence and intelligence in general. So thank you for sharing it. And yeah, I choose one. I have just one, just a closing. I will share my screen. No, it's not possible. I don't know why. Okay, so I don't share it because I don't know why it's not possible to share it. But anyway, I also found a question to our an answer to this question about an artifact, and this a book that is nourishing my reflection on remembering and forgetting from a while, and this accetta, okay. Okay, but anyway, it's not working anymore. And this by Funes de Memorius by Borges. So Borges tells the story of this young man whose relationship with memory is completely transformed by an accident, and he remembers everything. He remembers too much to the point that he doesn't understand. He cannot really understand the general picture, and the book starts with a description of how Funes, the memorial, looks at the passion flower, and I took it as a suggestion on how to look at the mimosa every day myself, even though I do not wish to remember everything, and also I see Funes as a warning to what happens when forgetting disappears and memory is only storage, like the digital present is showing us. That's it. And I thank you really a lot for your contribution, and I hope to stay in touch with all of you.
Thank you, Valentina. Many thanks to Sania, Eunice, Rubens, and Felipe that was with us for a while. I hope that many people will find our roundtable in the Resistance Journal of Radical Environmental Humanities YouTube channel. In the YouTube channel, there are some other resources I invite you to explore. And many thanks to Valentina because you brought all of us together. Okay? Maybe we should also thank Mimosa Pudica, right? That,
yes, let's thank
I am not sure if Mimosa is happy with this roundtable. We will never know, but at least we should acknowledge also her invitation. See you around. Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.